Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Working in Theater series, co-hosted or co-produced by Maroon Arts and Culture and Center Theater Group. I'm so excited to be here with you all this wonderful morning / afternoon, depending on where you are. I'd like to, we're going to start this series off with what we all have in common, which is that we are artists. So the Working in Theater series is all about how to create meaningful creative careers for ourselves and how we can be successful, get those bills paid, but also stay true to our artistic practice. And so it's only appropriate that we kick that off by focusing on the art. And so the theme for this week's panel is What's Your Story? We're going to spend some time identifying our artistic point of view. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that artistic point of view can influence your creative career. So before we get all the way into the swing of things, just a couple things. My name is LJ. I think I probably forgot to tell y'all that. And I am the founder and the executive producer at Maroon Arts and Culture. We're a brand new arts organization. So I've been doing theater for a while, but I'm starting an arts org. And so I am here to learn with all of you and see how I can take these weekly sessions and apply them to my own experience as I grow my little organization. And I'm really excited about that. I'm coming to you all live from the ancestral lands of the Tongva people here in Southern California. I also, whenever there's the beginning of a gathering, I like to begin by calling on the names of at least one ancestor on whose shoulders I stand. So today I call on Zora Neale Hurston, playwright, cultural anthropologist, journalist. And if you are joining us in the chat, I encourage you to tell us where you are joining us from. And if you want to shout out an ancestor, I encourage you to do that as well. On whose shoulders do you stand? Whose legacy is influencing your own legacy today? So share that with us in the comments. I am going to bring on our panelists. I'm so excited. So today we're going to be joined by two amazing artists with two distinct artistic points of view. Our first guest is Sophina Brown, and she's joining us here. And then we're also joined today by Hannah Kim. Sophina is an actress, and she's so much more, of course, like the rest of us artists, ///. And Hannah's a projectionist, which we were just talking before we came on that, there's no point in trying to categorize things into genres because we all just do so much. And so I'm going to give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves. Sophina, you want to go first? Just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your background.
Okay. Yes. Sophina Brown. I am I'm an actor. I'm also a theater producer here in Los Angeles. I've committed to producing the full American Century Cycle by August Wilson for the Los Angeles area. And I am also the founder of a new grassroots multi-generational organization launching in a few weeks called Support Black Theater. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here, excited to have this conversation because it's all about story, right? It's all about story and voice. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. And then Hannah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Make sure you're unmuted.
Yeah. My name is Hannah Kim. I'm a scenic and projection designer based in LA. Yeah.
And all right, so that's really all we need to know. And just so everyone knows, both of our panelists, their bios are available on the Padlet, which everyone should have received in their emails. So if you want to know even more about them, you can visit the Padlet. They both have websites. And then Sophina also sent us some links to some things that will help us as we go through our panel today. Before we get all the way started, I need to just make one quick announcement. Sorry, I'm not as prepared. Y'all forgive me because today is our first week, so we're still like a few little glitches and things happening. But I just want to make sure that we're as inclusive as possible. And I want to let everyone know that we're offering live open captioning for the webinar today. Super important info. So if you need to access that, I believe Camille is going to put that in the chat. Just make sure that's all together. Yeah, y'all bear with us. Just want to make sure that we're getting everything. Sorry. Camille, can you tell me? Okay, so Camille added it to the chat. The captioning is provided through a grant that I need to acknowledge, but I don't have my copy up. So Camille, y'all remember Camille from the summer? She's in the background helping me out. She could tell me, then I'll make sure I mention that. All right, cool. So I'll come back to that in a minute, but hopefully at the very least you have the link so that you can get access to that. So coming back to our guests, I think that I want to start off by just asking you both, what is your artistic point of view? What is it that drives you when you're making art?
Okay, I can go first. I can actually honestly say that it hasn't been until recently that I can say that I have had an artistic point of view. I'm just going to go ahead and confess that. It's been in the last probably like 6-7 years that I feel like I'm really grounded in the truth of what that is. I came out of a BFA theater program at the University of Michigan, and I really didn't know my voice. I really didn't. I was kind of stuck in the idea of who I thought I should be and wasn't really secure in my identity and what I had to say as an artist. And it's kind of crazy because it's almost like it was more in when I left school, I was more in the mentality of careerism and kind of like being able to check off boxes, right? So I came out and I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? I want to get cast in a show and become equity. Okay, check. Now what do I want to do? I want to do Broadway. Okay, check. Now what do I want to do? I want to do a TV show. Or I want to do a film or whatever. And I went through years of just checking off boxes, right? And there was never any true fulfillment that came when the box got checked, I will say. And it wasn't until I was a series regular on a television show, and I was like, this is what I said I wanted to be doing. Why do I not have the joy that I thought would come with it? And so it wasn't until I realized that it was like no amount of money, no amount of position, no amount of fame or what have you, even though, it felt like when I was doing what I said I wanted to do, I could have been doing anything. I could have been pumping gas and it would have felt exactly the same way. And so, yeah, like I said, no amount of money or fame or whatever was able to fill kind of like that void that I was in. And it wasn't until I tapped into what was truly nourishing and fulfilling and sustaining, which was mission. And it's all about mission, knowing what that is. And that finding my mission was how I found my voice.
Yes. Can you summarize your mission for us real quick?
Well, it's funny because the link, I don't know if you said, I know it wasn't working, but there is a part in that Cornell West and Steve McQueen, when they're talking about Paul Robeson, and Cornell West mentions, he says, we're all poets, right? Mm-hmm. And a poet doesn't just mean versifiers. It means those of us who use imagination and empathy to enter an alternate world. And when we do that, we become we conscious instead of I conscious. So part of what I was saying was happening when I left school was I was very I conscious. Mm-hmm. And now stepping into almost like the poetry of mission that we have as artists and being able to now be we conscious. At the end of the day, what we do through story, it's all about transforming and healing. Mm-hmm. I mean, comparable potential in story to transform and heal, and then ultimately to liberate. So my mission as an artist is every time I step into story, be it as an actor, be it as a producer, what have you, that I am aware that through that story, somebody's going to recognize themselves and be changed, and hopefully change for the better. And because that exists every single time we pick up scripted material, my mission is to always have no less than that impact, to be shooting for that, where I'm like, there's somebody out here that needs to hear this story, and in doing so will be changed by it.
Yes, that's beautiful. I think it was Barbara and Carlton Millett said that Black theater is theater with a purpose. It doesn't just do nothing. It's designed to transform and to call attention to things. What about you, Hannah? What drives you artistically?
I think what Safina said rang a lot of bells for me in terms of I think the first time. So my dad is a film director in Seoul, South Korea. So I kind of grew up with it, even though environment wise, I feel maybe I felt like I was without really being an artist, I kind of had a false conception. I was like, oh, I guess I'm an artist because I feel like I was surrounded by arts all the time. And it was such a kind of natural thing for me, but I don't think I was an artist back then, truly. It's kind of a similar trajectory where you think you are a one thing, but looking back, you're not really. I think for me, more of us, more of that concept arose when I came to the state to study. And when I was growing up, Seoul was pretty homogenous society. It's much more, it's a little different now, but I think just coming here and then just learning about how how I'm perceived in the state, and just the beautiful diversity that I experienced here, that kind of made myself search a little bit deeper into my identity and what it means to be and also what it means to be truly us, because I think it's easier it is easy to experience the division. It's in Seoul, I don't even though the same social problems exist, classism and racism, everything exists in Seoul as well, but the degree of it and then the history of it, the context of it is vastly different, and it is so much more complicated here. And I think diving deep into it, I think made me searching a little bit deeper into what it means to be really us together, even though we look so different.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's the thing about a homogenous society. It's a little bit still people discriminate against each other, but it's not as here some people can be so terrible so easily. I think there's some sort of mechanism about that as well. So I think yeah, anyways, so I think going through that trajectory, I think for me also it was a journey about learning who you are really first, and then that leads you to learning how to be truly us all together. So I think that's.
I love that point. One of my mentors is Korean. Shout out to Dr. Ajahn Kim. I love her so much. But as I was working through my thesis, we had this conversation because I was writing about Black theater and Black dramaturgy in particular. And she was just talking to me about her journey as just as a mentor and as an academic, and how she had to, understand that there is a need for different categories of expression because we are such a diverse community here in America.
Right. And that really needs to be celebrated. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, I think that it's so interesting that you both said that because,
Oh, no.
oh, what happened? Somebody said, oh, no, did something happen? Is it me?
Oh, no, I think Hannah's frozen.
Okay. She can come back. It's okay. If she could just come back into the link if something happens. But what you were saying about the understanding that you're a part of a larger community, that is definitely something that I've studying the Black aesthetic, that's something that's pretty consistent within the way that we've traditionally done theater historically. Hi Hannah, welcome back. No big deal.
Oh, I
And that's okay.
That's so crazy.
That's all right, we're all still here. I was just saying that, being influenced of this idea that we're all together, and like in service of the community. And then Hannah talking about the way that her experience from Korea has kind of shaped the way that she approaches doing art. And I just really feel that as we expand our acceptance of a variety of backgrounds and aesthetics, then we can start to really make more room for more people to follow their artistic point of view and to see it through. So I really appreciate both of you guys bringing that into the conversation. I kind of wanted to go back a little bit in terms of your background, and I just wanted to ask, like, when did you realize that you were artists? I know Hannah, you talked a little bit about it. You were like, "Oh, I guess I'm an artist one day," and did it change? Did anything change for you, or was it like you just continued to live you're like, "Oh, I've been an artist this whole time. I'm gonna just keep doing what I do," or were you like, "Oh my goodness, I'm an artist. I need to like live an artist life now"?
No. I think it's yeah. I think it was more internal, and I also like personally, I don't think there's like a shape to the life of artists. Like I think it's like it to me it's like really more of an internal. Also, like I think value system as well. I think it really shifts your priority order. I think that was the big thing about it, and also more of an attitude toward what you're doing and what you're choosing to do.
What about you, Sophina? Have you always been an artist, or did you realize one day, like, oh my goodness, I'm serving this purpose?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I don't remember ever consciously being separate from that definition of myself. You know what I mean? I even when I was really, really young, I knew what I wanted to do. I can't remember ever consciously going like, oh, I think I want to be an actor. Like it just was, you know what I mean? Like things were just at 4 or 5, or I just kind of knew. However, I will say that there was definitely a moment where I understood the connection between artists and activists, and that was very much like, you know what I mean? That opened up my artistry in a completely different way, having that piece, because that is both so grounding and so freeing at the same time. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So there was definitely an awareness there. But I think that I think that I've always felt pulled and called really to story.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's beautiful. So my follow-up question is like, have you ever experienced that tug, that push and that pull between like, I'm an artist and I want to pursue this art, but we live in a capitalist society and like, should I go get just a full-time job? I call my mom like every 3 days and tell her I'm about to quit this maroon arts and culture and go work in a call center because this is too stressful. Like, have you all ever experienced that? And if you have, how do you get through it?
Yeah. I will say, I just have to say, like to piggyback on something that you said a couple minutes ago, I would not be the artist that I am today, the activist, the friend, the mother, the wife, nothing without mentorship in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are so many times where I have been in a place where I'm like, Lord, okay, I guess this is the last day. You about to close the door on this chapter because I don't know how I'm gonna get, there have been times, you know what I'm saying, where you're like, okay, what can I still do you think maybe I could I don't know, go back to working at the restaurant, or go back to or maybe do something that I've never tried before, because this right here,
Mm-hmm.
a journey, and it's been a hard journey. But I will say, in terms of the mentors that have been in my life, two in particular, Michelle Shea and Diana Castle, I have to give shout outs to them, because not only have they been key for me in terms of developing my artistic point of view, but if you have people in your life that can speak truth to that moment that you were just describing right there, and to encourage you and to remind you what it is, in terms of like that internal thing inside of you that keeps you coming back to Maroon Arts, you know what I'm saying? That knows you can't sit it down. It's like that letter, letter to a young poet that I put the link in for.
Yes.
In that letter, where Rilke says, you're looking to externals, you're looking outside of yourself. You have to look inside yourself and get real quiet and ask yourself, must I, he's talking about poetry. So he says, ask yourself, must I write? So coming back to that moment of saying, like, must I act, or must I create? And if you know that the answer to that is a resounding I must, you're going to keep on doing it. It doesn't matter how many times you hit up against that wall, you're going to keep coming to it, because that's who you are. That's identity right there.
You're right. You ain't never lied, because I'd be trying to quit, and then I'd be like, I can't quit. And then my bank account be like, quit. And then I'd be like, I can't.
Yeah.
I want Hannah to answer this question too, but real quick, everybody's lifting up their mentors in the chat. So we're going to put some of them up on the screen so that we can shout them out, and, really honor. I believe in calling out names, calling out ancestors, and shouting out mentors. I did see in the chat somebody put voice coach, director, and professor Christine Menzies, and she is my mentor too. She yells at me all the time. She's mad at me right now because I was supposed to stop by rehearsal, and she holds me accountable, and she's one of my mentors as well. I love her so much. So we're going to put up some mentors on the screen. And then, Hannah, what about you? You ever feel that push and that pull between, like, I want to be an artist? It's like, I don't have a full-time job.
Always. I think in general, like, keeping the freelancing career is pretty, it's pretty challenging, because if you don't quit, you will be blessed with choices as well. But then what choices are the right ones to make? I think that would be another difficult chapter but for me, like, as everyone, like, of course, for me, also mentors, also my colleagues. I feel like the big reason for me to is also, like, especially in LA, sticking to theater, I think, requires, like, even greater love in a way, because, like, it's such a city that, like, different areas compete, and live theater. I feel like it definitely, I think it's a lie if we say, like, our atmosphere is same as, like, let's say New York or, like, other city. Each city has a different kind of, like, culture environment. And the fact that we, like, the committing to the theater means something different in LA as well. It means something different in different, like, locations too. And I think for me is really the people who, like, the team and people I work with, like colleagues, fellow designers, directors. I think those are the really, like, strongest thread for me to be not quitting, really.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is, like, it's community, right? You almost have to try to get yourself into a community of fellow artists so that you can keep the hope alive.
Right.
Just remind yourself, and you can remind one another that you're here for the greater purpose, which is, like Sophina said, the story, here to tell a story.
Also for the story, like what I've been feeling is also how you make art together, because art we make together, it's a collective art. Even though art is like everything same, but if we get into like a little bit of like specific logistic of it, that
Mm-hmm.
all we do is like collaboration with other people rather than me trying to pull out my own soul vision.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to me. The fact, like, for me, when I say like I love storytelling, not only the story that we are presenting to other people that they hear, but also like the journey of making something together. That is a story to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a big kind of like that's a really big holding block for me as well. Like that changes my life. The collaboration process that I have with my fellow artists changes my own life, and hopefully people involved in the production also changed for the better. So I try to find the right environment to make art, if that makes sense as well.
Yeah, it does. I think that especially since we're living in this moment where there's like a reckoning in the theater world and in so many, industries, I feel like coming back to this idea that theater and art and performance is supposed to be in service to the community. It should not be isolated or insulated. It's like I feel like that's really what is kind of at the crux of some of this current event stuff. It's that these larger institutions have kind of built up walls around themselves to where the question really has to be asked, who are they serving? If the tickets are, $200 and the same people are making all decisions, who are you really serving? Because as a person that loves theater and loves performance, you're not serving me because I don't have $200 to go see Hamilton. I just don't. So I think that that's really important. This idea of like building an artistic community, remembering that you're here to serve and to serve the story and to tell the story. And then I think also why this story, and why are you the person to tell it? Do you guys have any advice for our viewers on why this story and why you're the person to tell it? How do you pick your projects and how do you decide whether or not they're going to appropriately serve your mission? You just go with whatever pays the most. I'm just kidding. Nobody makes decisions like that in our field.
I will say that as a producer, I definitely, am pulled toward Black narratives. It is so, how can I say? There's a quote by August Wilson. He talks about, for so long, we as Black creatives have not been the stewards and custodians of our own narratives, of our own, our own stories. And so I'm very called to the mission, just like, he talks about in the speech he gave, TCG speech, the ground on which I stand, which we were talking about earlier, which, has been essential in terms of how I pursue projects. That speech has had a great impact on me and how I pursue the projects that I would like to produce. But also as it relates to like you're talking about creating more space. Someone once gave me some really good advice as a producer to say, look for the silences and then make sure that you're amplifying those voices, those stories. And so I think about that a lot when choosing stories. I wanted to also, can I go back for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I can do it later if you want to answer this while we're on this, but Hannah said something that just set off some bells for me in terms of environment. And I've been thinking so much about that. And I'm about to like geek out a little bit because I've been thinking so much about environment as it relates to us as artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And thinking, if we all think of ourselves as seeds, right? I think about what does it take for a seed to be able to grow? Not only just to grow, but to be developed and then to sustain growth, right? Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking a lot about what light, water, and soil represent. you know, and we've touched on so many of those things here. And I was just thinking to myself, you know, like, yeah, we all need light. We need the sun, right? To me, that's like a spiritual center, whatever that is for you. To me, it's a spiritual center. You know what I'm saying? That gives off that light that we need. The water is what we're talking about in terms of mentorship and community. We need people to pour in to us,
Yes.
you know what I'm saying? Pour in. And then I'm thinking about the ground and the soil, how that is, you know, what you mentioned right off the top, you know, like the ancestors and people who have gone before, that have sacrificed, that have, you know, come before us and knocked down walls, you know, knocked down barriers, broken through ceilings. And it's like the nutrients of that are in the actual soil. And then all of us as seeds, as we are growing, we're taking root, right? And there's an interlocking stabilization that happens with that in terms of support. What Hannah was talking about in terms of like what she gets through collaboration. And I don't know, I'm geeking out a little bit in terms of my metaphor, but it's a beautiful thing to think about that root system.
Yes.
And think about then the fruit that is produced. You know what I'm saying? And it all is due to environment. It's all due to, you know, exactly what you guys have been talking about. So I just wanted to say that, like, it just set something off for me. It's a beautiful thing.
No, that's a beautiful metaphor, and I think it's really appropriate. And I think it's the roadmap going forward. What about you, Hannah? How do you prioritize? How do you say, okay, this is the project that's going to best serve my mission?
So if I'm to be completely honest with you, before pre-pandemic, I don't think I really thought about it. Like, I think I really, like, mostly with like, I mean, I always like had my priority, which was like, I had a gut feeling that if it's something I like, I would go for it, you know. So like, I like, that was my criteria, I think, more. Post-pandemic, with like the everything, like a lot of like deep reckoning in, you know, everything that we all know. I think I'm more in tune. I've always loved theater because I think we tend to be a little bit freer in terms of like, we don't like, you know, being nonprofit is very hard, but at the same time, I think that allows some opportunity to tell stories that don't necessarily have to be popular, right? I think, which is very important. I mean, I'm very in tune with pop culture and everything, but at the same time, like, my heart is in more marginalized stories and stories that don't often get told. And also, I am increasingly very interested in telling Asian American stories, going back to my root a little bit more, but those are very rare. Like, there are only really handful of, like, you know, there was like David Henry Hwang, and then like now, like, it's actually a pretty exciting time right now. We have Gia Park, we have, like, you know, so many other Lloyd Suh, like other younger like Asian writers who are like giving us like different types of narratives rather than like one person's perspective. Like, it's not anyone's fault really, but you know. So it's to like, in terms of like making a choice, it's a little trickier, right? Like, those, you know, it's not common to be coming across those opportunities, and a lot of them sometimes, like, they also like a producing side of it will not be so particularly aware of whom they're hiring. I think there's like, both sides are kind of dangerous. Like, one side would be completely like obligate to like, you know, like not aware of like basically like, you know, white folks to tell like other like people of color. I don't know, like that is like one extreme, and another extreme is like also like cornering like through like, I don't know, like if we go into the race talk, I feel like it gets like much a bigger conversation. I think there's also a danger in that, like, oh, this is like story that's happening in China. Let's hire like some East Asian person because East Asia is East Asia. Like there's also danger
Mm-hmm.
that like it's like grouping, kind of like stereotyping people, and then like, it's like Asian story. So she's Asian, so it's like of course she should tell. That's also kind of like little danger. I think there's like certain like we just have to be, I think, much more sensitive about everything moving forward, I think. But anyways, like I think in terms of like where my heart is, like I think it was a interesting year to really like diving deeper and then reckoning what that means.
Yes. You're right about that. It can get tricky, but that's why I think it's so important for there to be like people like Sofina who are on the producing side. I know for me, part of the reason why I started Maroon Arts and Culture is because I want to produce work that I am not seeing done in the
Right.
field. And being a person that has come from a more marginalized perspective within this field, I feel like I have the ability to discern, and for somebody like me or Sophina to go in and produce Black work, it's not going to be a simple matter of, oh, we're going to hire the only Black set director we know. We're going to hire like you get a little bit more nuance, but then that's what it means to like spread the love. We have to open up doors all the way up to the top just to make sure that it's not just, for show, because nobody has time for that. Excuse me. I know that for me, working with my artistic point of view, our organization, it's called Maroon Arts and Culture. We're named after people who ran from bondage, even though they had nowhere to go. Everywhere in the world where there was slavery, you have maroon societies in South America, in Haiti, in New Orleans, off the East Coast of America. And even though there was slavery all over the world, in the North, in the South, in the UK, there were people that were still like, I can't do it. And they still ran, even though they didn't have anywhere to go. And they made a place for themselves in the wilderness. And they survived and they built communities and societies. And some of them are still thriving to this day. And so that's my mission. That's my perspective, is like, we're gonna go into the wilderness. We're gonna come up with our own stuff. We're gonna partner with our fellow people who are in this wilderness, and we're gonna create our own thing. That having been said, I'm still sitting up here on this webinar with Center Theater Group, a very large arts organization. And so there is, when you're an artist, there is kind of like that little line between, it's like, no, this is my mission. This is what I'm about. But then also like, this is what I need to do in order to get the mission out there. And so, yeah, it's kind of like you do kind of have to go back and forth. I've seen some really good comments in the chat about making the arts more accessible. This is a soapbox I could stand on all day long. I think I actually already touched on it when I was talking about the price of theater tickets. But what do you guys think about that? Do you think that the pandemic has made the arts more accessible or less accessible?
I mean, we're still in the process of kind of trying to reimagine, pandemic art. You know what I'm saying? And what it even is, what this time has kind of allowed us to. Do you know what I'm trying to say? We're still trying to define where we are, is what I'm saying. A friend of mine who I love this quote, I always say this, but he's like, look, you can't redline the internet, So there's definitely something that this time has done in terms of opening things up for everybody, and to maybe people who wouldn't necessarily feel as though they have either the finances or the invitation to walk into a physical theater. So I think that there's something to be said about that. However, as it relates to what you were talking about, kind of being in two places, like, of partnering with a very large institution, but then also coming, I think that, just to speak to that point a little bit, and it all comes down to autonomy, right?
Yeah.
Talking about equity, it all comes down to autonomy, but that autonomy doesn't negate partnerships. because we still have to have that. We have to have both of those things, you know?
Yes.
And I think that as long as we can fully pursue both simultaneously, truly, you know, and be, I don't want to even use the word allowed. That's not, because I don't think we need permission for autonomy. I believe that's a given right. But there definitely are systems by which, you know, we have operated in for a very, very long time that have not been necessarily supportive of each marginalized voice's autonomy, you know, and that's a fact. So you start then saying, okay, well, I know that I want to obtain both of these things and that they absolutely can, that can be achieved, right? But how do I do that? And I think it speaks to not just reforming current systems, but creating new ones.
Yes. Somebody in the chat says, speaking on autonomy, a favorite quote of mine is, independence is being independent of each other.
It's all about interdependence. It's all about whoever that is. Yes, yes, and amen. It's all
That's
about
Veronica Holly.
Yes.
That's a beautiful.
Love it.
Beautiful quote.
What do you think, Hannah? You have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I do think some aspect has been opened up to the current situation. Like I work in video essentially. So like a lot of like video tools or like video tutorials. Some of the organizations had like a really deep discount in the beginning of pandemic and all of that. So I would say like things opened up a little, like things opened up certainly for some aspects, but at the same time, like there is a community where like internet is not there really, like, you know, like I think everyone has internet, but like the quality of the internet is different. Like everybody might have computer, but the quality of computer is different in terms of like digital art making. It is so bound to the material to a degree. Like what tool do you have? Like what kind of spec of computer do you have? Like that part I think is still, you know. But
that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point that I don't think that people really talk about, the fact that even though it's more accessible because you can just log on and watch things, not everybody can log on. And in terms of making art, like actually making the work, it's not necessarily become more accessible. I mean, there's more classes and things out there, but they do depend, like you said, on a certain level of technological access.
Yeah.
And a certain learning style too. Like I can watch a YouTube video and learn some things, but I can't learn everything online through video. Yeah, that's an excellent point. I hadn't really thought about it like that. Yeah, the access to technology.
I had neither. That's a really good point.
Now I gotta broaden my scope in my plots that I have. Yeah, so some people in the chat, they're talking about whether or not they feel like it's more accessible. Mostly, I think people are saying that it is. Some people are saying that it's not. But the pandemic has made the importance of art obvious for our survival. Yes, different internet speeds, loss of audience reactions, and certain design elements. I think also too, some jobs have become redundant within this pandemic. Some jobs in the theater, I think people are starting to realize like maybe we don't even need that job at all, you know? So that's another way that things have kind of been changed. Yeah, I think that, we are realizing that the arts are really critical to our survival. People have really depended on artists for a couple different things, not just for entertainment, not just for, verses, on Saturday night on Instagram Live, but even for programming. I've seen the Kennedy Center had a call out for teaching artists to make videos, like curriculum, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, the arts is clearly important, but like, how do you convince? Well, let me just. I'm about to get back on one of my soapboxes, but I'm just gonna calm down. But you know what? Here, let me just. Somebody in the chat said, Is there an imbalance of financial distribution in theater we need to address? That is such a more put together way of saying exactly what I was about to say. So thank you for that. Is there an imbalance of financial distribution? And how do we fix that? Because I know my mission, I got the passion, I got the credential, but like, who do I ask for the funding from? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Ooh, God, how long we got?
I know.
I mean, the short answer is yes. A resounding yes, there absolutely is an imbalance. Okay, I mean, this is my opinion. In terms of my perspective and where I'm coming from right now, this is all I can offer, because this has long been, as we've mentioned, the ground on which I stand. August Wilson talks about this at length in terms of, he says, Black theater is alive. It is vital. It's just not funded. So I'm gonna come from the place of being a Black woman, a Black actor, a Black theater producer. That's where I'm coming from. So this is going to be just a part. But I will say, as it relates to this topic, the current system, as we mentioned before, it has the majority of the funding out there going to mainstream institutions. And then you have other smaller theaters and smaller theater organizations who are pretty much duking it out for about, gosh, I can't remember what the exact numbers are, but it's a fraction.
It's like $1,000 to $5,000.
What'd you say?
$1,000 to $5,000.
It's like a fraction of the funding, and it's like a whole bunch of minority BIPOC institutions are trying to get that very small piece. And so you look at that and you go, okay, well, something is wrong here. And I think what happens is, during the pandemic, there have been some excellent initiatives that have been put together. One, the Black Seed. I don't know if you know about this, LJ. Have you heard about that?
Okay. Yeah, I've read about it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. It just hit, but it's like one of these things where it's like people are trying to speak to this issue because it is very prevalent. It is a very real issue. Where I'm coming from is, I definitely also feel like there needs to be some attention that can be devoted not just to external sources for funding, but internal sources for funding. And what I mean by that is, instead of waiting for something to trickle down, right, from somewhere else, how can we generate some things? How can we generate partnerships, equitable partnerships, that then things bubble up from within our community? And for example, it's like, I'm always looking for ways to generate cultural capital, right? So how can I, as a Black theater producer, knowing that I am producing very specifically, I'm thinking very specifically about the stories and the people that I want to represent and serve, right? So how can I then go into the very community that I am representing and serving as a curator, as an artist, and say, okay, let's get together and let's strengthen, because just sheer building in terms of numbers build strength, right? So reaching out and trying to have relationship with restaurants, with hair salons, with bookshops, with fashion designers or whatever, so that we can say, okay, as a community, we have very similar missions and goals in terms of widening the space, right? In terms of amplifying our voices. How do we then support one another in a way with not only our words, not only our presence, but our dollars and our cents, so that we're doing just that? We're generating cultural capital, so that I know that if I have a program for a production that I'm that I'm doing, I'm going to go to you. I'm going to say, okay, do you want to advertise in here? Do you want to do something where, okay, Soul Blessings, I'll tell you what, you give people 10% off for mentioning that I'm doing 2 Trains Running, right? And then I'm going to send people to you. You send people to me. I'm going to give you discounted, tickets or whatever. If they mention, you know what I'm saying? Figuring out how to partner with different types of, am I speaking any kind of sense?
Yes, you're talking about collective economics. which is, that's a really important aspect of a lot of different cultural traditions. But it's not really something that we put a lot of emphasis on here in the US. But yeah, collective economics, that's basically what you're saying.
Okay, I didn't even know I had a name for it, because I've been thinking about this in the sense of like, what does it look like to really support one another artistically, so that our ecosystem has, even though, like Hannah beautifully said, that Los Angeles has an artistic ecosystem that is so unique, so diverse. How can we make sure that each part is healthy so that we got a healthy whole? You know what I mean? And I think we really have to think about that when it comes to funding, because that's a vital part of health for our for BIPOC institutions. It is key. It's not the only thing. I think relationship is our greatest resource, but funding is definitely key.
Yes. Did you have anything to add, Hannah?
I'm in a little bit. I think I'm in a little bit different position because I don't have I don't organize the full picture myself, But I guess like for my perspective, I try to balance, things that I try to utilize the like kind of hard skill that is like a little bit more capitalism driven like economy that I can actually like make resource for myself, that like my equipment and like stuff like that are usually from like maybe not the art that I'm proud of the most, but then like then I have a kind of base equipment that because I think for me, it's also like I'm a visual artist, and I think for me, like one of the quotes I love is, I think it's I'm not using it in the very correct context, I don't think, but how I interpret it is like the job role of an artist is to make the revolution irresistible, by Tony Cadet.
Ooh, I love that.
That's kind of like what I would like to do. Like, so like I don't devalue something looking beautiful. Like that's kind of my job. Like making it something attractive, so like unless like otherwise like you probably might have passed it by, but you want to stop and listen to it, you want to stop and look at it because it draws your attention. I feel like that's my job, instead of like I'm not we are saying like art is art, but I'm a little bit like I think I know my limit in the sense that I'm not a writer.
Yes.
I'm not like I directed some videos, but like I'm not really like a director for like feature length, like a storytelling arc, but I can support it visually.
Yes.
And I define myself to be that way.
Yes, I think that's so important. I mean, it's gotta, there is a level of aesthetics, right, that comes into play for the art form. You can't forget it. Then we're performance studies instead of theater. Just kidding. No shade to my performance studies friends. So I think I probably got us off track. Y'all, please forgive me, because I've been fighting this good fight all week long for Maroon Arts and Culture. And so I think I got us off topic, because that's what I'm going through right now. But before we move into this next activity, I just want to put it to our panelists and see if you have any advice for our viewers, our participants, on how to stay true. Like, how do they stay true to the course? How do they stay true to the mission, stay true to their artistic point of view, and push through the capitalism, and push through the doubt, people being like, oh, you're an artist, that's not a real job. Like, how do you stay true to the mission?
I'm not sure if I'm answering this correctly, but in practicality, I think like whenever like I'm feeling like I'm kind of like going to not a great place, I feel like being disciplined always really helped me out. And being like, personally, I don't think being an artist is like being aloof, right? Like we are like, I think being an artist actually the very opposite of that. Like more listening to your own life and then daily practice, and then not disregarding like you know, I don't have to do these trivial things because it's not high art. Like, I don't think that way. So, like, I think coming back to yourself and then trying to like live a life with the correct value for me is how I'm trying to forge on.
That's great advice. What about you, Safina? What do you think?
Yeah, I think she said something that's very key for me as an actor, for sure, which goes back to um, daily practice, and being disciplined, and you know, staying focused on the right thing. I think helps because oftentimes we're focused on product, and
Yeah.
that really doesn't hold the highest place of value. Um,
Right.
so, eh, cultivating things like what we talked about earlier in terms of cultivating your imagination, cultivating your empathy, which is something that I'm like, like I said, I mentioned Diana Castle earlier and her studio, the Imagine Life Studio. It's like what that woman has given in terms of the ability to having a daily practice, cultivate and deepen and widen my capacity as an artist, and knowing every single day that I'm in it because it's not about me. Being an artist, people always want to say like, oh, you're so actors or whatever, they're so self-absorbed and they're so me, or aloof, like Hannah said, or whatever. It's like it's so the opposite. That is antithetical to anything that artistry is, because like you said, it is all mission based, it is all about service, it is all about others. And so
Yes.
just constantly saying in that, not only daily practice of your discipline, but daily practice of that mentality is key.
Yes, that's so great because I'm hearing a lot of like going inside, coming back to your mission, but I'm also hearing discipline. I'm hearing mental focus. I'm hearing consistency. And so these are all things that we have to remember that as artists, we have to do these things too. If we were basketball players, we'd be in the gym every day practicing. And so part of what I think is critical to staying true to your mission and seeing your art through is that discipline, making sure that you're practicing, that you're consuming as much as you can, that you're staying up to date with what's happening in your industry, and that you're asking yourself, how can I add to it?
That's right.
Or like Sophina said earlier, like, where's their silence and how can I fill it? So I definitely think that that's critical, a critical aspect, just the life of the artist. What is it called? The Artist Way or something like that. There's that book. You guys know any other resources, drop them in the chat that can help artists stay focused on their day to day. I think that the reason why I wanted to start with this conversation for this series is because as we go through these next 9 weeks, we're going to talk about some more of the practical aspects of being a creative and creating a career that is a reflection of your identity as an artist. And so we'll talk about, budgets, how to market your work, the structure of an arts organization. We're going to talk to some producers. We're going to have a producers panel. But I really feel like it's important, and I really encourage all of our participants to let your artistic point of view be your North Star. Figure out what it is that you want to say. What are you about? Who do you represent and what do you represent? And let that be your guide as you figure out what you want your career to look like. Because it's like Sophina said at the top of the conversation, sometimes it feels like, oh, this is everything I wanted. And then you get there and you look around and you're like, this is not actually what I wanted. But if you start, especially since most of our participants are early in their career, if you start now figuring out what is your artistic point of view, then you can really start to create something that, a career and a lifestyle for yourself that's in service to that. So, okay, somebody are sharing some of their good practices. So that's actually a great segue. At the end of the summer session, Camille walked us through a session, some slides on how to develop your artistic manifesto, your artistic point of view. and how to express it. I think that's so important because as we go through this process, I'm personally a big advocate of producing your own work, and people will ask why you. And the better you are, the more familiar you are with that answer, the more they'll be inclined to listen to you. So we're going to revisit that activity. We're going to talk. We're going to spend a little time now, these last few minutes, these last 30 minutes, talking about artistic perspective. We're going to put up some prompts, and I encourage you all to answer in the chat so we can put them up on the screen. But before we do that, we do have to say goodbye to Hannah. So everybody say bye to Hannah in the chat. Thank you so much for your perspective and for your insight and for your just expert opinion. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to pull up this slideshow by Hannah. I'm going to pull up this slideshow and share my screen with you all. And me and Safina are going to go through. We're going to see if we can get some artistic perspective going. Y'all got to bear with me now. Hold on now. Let's see. I literally told Camille, I was like, let me practice the sharing the screen part before we get started because, all right. So career advocacy, defining what you want and identifying proactive ways to help you achieve it. The main takeaway for me here is defining what you want, you know, and then over the next 9 weeks, we'll talk even more about how to achieve it and how to turn it into your creative career. So we're going to start off with, I want to build my brand and establish myself in the professional world. If you did this with us over the summer, I would really encourage you to maybe even revisit what you wrote over the summer and decide and see if it's changed at all, especially in, with, some people, we just found out Broadway not coming back till next May. So I don't know if that's gonna, that affects anybody's mission. So I would definitely encourage you to just kind of revisit this. So how do I identify professionally? What's important to you? What do you value? What's your skill set? These are things that I would like for everyone to kind of reflect on. You can reflect on this later. We're going to go through something together, but these are things that you may want to reflect on later. And I think also, I'm going to link this to the Padlet so that you can revisit it. And then Camille, she's so Johnny on the spot. She's putting some of the words in the chat too, so you can keep up. But what I really want to do together is this next one. So this is Camille's, if you remember it. So we're going to start with these stems. I am, I value, I want, I fight for, I enjoy, I can. So I'll start. I would love for Safina to share her responses to these stems. If you can, but I'll start so that she can have some time to think and marinate on what she wants to say. So for me, I am a dramaturg, producer, and educator. I value arts education, cultural programming, and I value the amplification of marginalized voices. I want to support my fellow artists in the production of their work, and I fight for accessibility within arts and theater spaces. I enjoy connecting with communities and making partnerships with people. And the last one is I can not wait until I get this Maroon Arts and Culture rolling so that I can put all my friends on. That's probably not real, official, but that's just how I feel. I can do anything that I set my mind to, but what I really want to do is amplify marginalized voices, produce the work of independent artists, and support other people in creating their art. And then that's for Maroon Arts and Culture. Me personally, when people ask me what I do, I'm a dramaturg, and my area of specialization is Black performance heritage, connecting past performances to contemporary experiences. I had to edit that statement like 5 times before I was comfortable telling it to people. So what do you think, Safina? And then to the people in the chat, hold on, I got a message here. I'm having a hard time. Oh yeah, so it's I am, I value, I want, I fight for, I enjoy, I can. And the people that are in the chat, feel free to share your responses to these stems in the chat, and we'll put them up on the screen and we'll share them with the group. What do you think, Safina? What are you thinking on these topics? Oh, hold on a second. That was my bad. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying this is okay. Top of my head, but I want to figure out this even more later. Yeah, I would say I am an artist, an activist, a builder. I value relationship. I value connection with other people. I want, my goodness, I want all of us, I want us all to have autonomy, to have equity. I want us to all be whole and healed. I fight for our artistic well-being. I fight for, like you said, LJ, for marginalized voices to be amplified. I fight for autonomy again, for those who feel as though they are powerless to effect change, to know that they have value and that they are essential to our community as a whole. I enjoy Prince. I'm sorry. No, that's not right, but I do. I enjoy this work that we do. You know, I enjoy just like conversations like these. I really do. And building relationship. And I can affect change. I can influence. I can use, everything that I've been given and been blessed with to help others and to build other people up.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I should have did like the professional thing and like wrote all this stuff out ahead of time. But to be honest with you, it's still something that I'm reflecting on, in my day to day, especially the part where it's like what I value, what I fight for, and what I enjoy. Because everything that I value, I cannot necessarily fight for. I'll be fighting all day. I'll be exhausted. I'll be passed out from fighting so much. And then what I value, I think, is actually slowly changing because I'm a person that's always been fiercely independent. I've always been a person that really values my independence and values my freedom. But I'm realizing more and more that if I want to do what it is that I want to do, then I have to be more. I have to be able to depend on a community, like we said earlier in the conversation. So these are just currently things that I'm still reflecting on now. Let's put up some. Let's see. Okay. Let's put up some of the responses that we've got in the chat. I am an artist, a creator, a storyteller. I want to represent my culture and fight the system, showing that we can make it. Yes, send me more things. I just have a little note of encouragement to everyone out there. If you put that you are an aspiring something in your statement, I'm gonna just encourage you to remove that aspiring out the phrase, out the sentence. You are what you are. Like we talked about earlier, you don't just wake up one day and be like, you know what, I'm an artist now. You kind of know. So ain't no aspiring. You already doing it. You're here. You're in this series with us, and so you're clearly dedicated to your craft. I see so many people that are wanting to put on for their culture, that are wanting to tell untold stories, that are valuing their families and their communities. And so this is beautiful to me because art should have a purpose. Yes, inclusivity and honesty, restorative justice, honey. Yes, a fight for a safe world for my disabled brothers. Ain't that the truth? This is why your personal artistic point of view is so important. Nobody can tell your story like you. And the people that are a part of your community will be so grateful to see themselves represented. And so that's why before we started talking about anything else, how to be a producer, how to start a theater company, you got to start with what the story that you're trying to tell. If we were in a production meeting, that would be the first question, right? What story are we trying to tell here? Let me see some more of these. Writer, director, producer. Yes, working with actors. Next week, I'm going to have my poll game ready. This week, I didn't have my polls ready, but I'm curious to know how many of our participants are actors, singers, artists. Like, mostly we cater to theater people, but I feel like everybody does more than one thing. So, it's exciting for me to see that people are, also comedians, also craftsmen, craftspeople making things, and producers. Oh, shout out to the dramaturgs. I see a couple of dramaturgs. Nobody ever does that but me. No, yes. Dramaturgy is so critical because, we all know that we're experiencing, people are wanting to tell diverse stories. But when you get into the production room for some of these stories, it's very homogenous. And my personal opinion is that dramaturgy is a way to bring more voices into the room. When I come into a room, you have my voice, but you also have the voices of all the theorists, historians that I've read. You may not know how Langston Hughes might feel about this piece, but you bring in a Black dramaturg, I could tell you how I feel, and I could tell you how he might feel too. So yes, I think that that's super important. Combining different artistic mediums to make multi-platform projects which tell a story of a collective. Yes. Yes, we have musicians. This is beautiful. I'm so happy to see what everyone is into. I really hope that over these next few weeks, we can support you all in bringing these missions to fruition. I really do.
Yes.
I would encourage you all to, I'm going to make sure I put the link to this in the Padlet, but please do come back to it because as we go through this series, we're going to come back to that frequently. We may be talking about marketing, and you're going to need to know, like I said, what it is, what your artistic point of view is. So before we hang up for today, we got a few more minutes left. So I wanted to ask you, Sophina, if there was, I wanted to ask if you feel like you could complete your mission in any other field. I know that sounds like I feel like that's maybe a weird question, but sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed by what it is that I've decided to dedicate my life to, I do ask myself, is there another way that I could be doing this? Is there a way I could be doing this outside of the arts? Do you feel that your mission is dependent on this artistic endeavor?
That's a really interesting question because the first thing I thought of is what would be the other thing? What would be another career path? And I would be minister. But I don't think what we do is different from ministry. So, you know what I'm saying? So, because story is at the root of what story is creation, right? And regardless of whether we're a teacher or whether we're an astronaut or a physicist, whatever our field are, we're all creating. We're all making discoveries. We're all building stories. So it's like a yes and a no. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a real question because I know several people who maybe started off as artists, actors, writers, this kind of thing, but they have found real purpose on the administrative side of our field. And so they feel that they are able to fulfill their mission in their day-to-day jobs at the office. I don't have no shade on that. I say more power to them because we need them. We need them in the office.
Feel like they're creatives too. But don't you? I mean, it's kind of like it's all the same. It's yes, because God bless administrators. You know what I'm saying?
I know that's right.
Woo!
I know that's right. Yes. And I know our friend Camille, she's an administrator and she's got a mission, and I see her working her mission in her day-to-day job as well. And so I just wanted to put that out to people, don't feel that you have to be some kind of performance artist in order to tell the story that you want to tell. if you do feel drawn towards a 9 to 5, this conversation is still just as important for you, because you might get, an opportunity dangled in front of you where you need to come back and ask yourself, does this fulfill the mission that I've identified for myself? So yeah, that was a real question. For me, maybe not. I have a hard time working for other people. I also have a hard time working traditional hours on the job. So for me that this is what works best. But yes, everybody does not have to take the same path. And that's going to be something that we talk about quite a bit during this series. There is no one path to a creative career for yourself.
Right. That's right.
You have to kind of just test the waters and see what's what, and then you decide what you want to do. But if you have your mission, if you have your point of view, and if you have your perspective and you're clear on it, then you can let that help decide the path that you want to take. What was your path, Sophina? Like, was it non-traditional? Did you go through, like theater programs?
Yeah, I would say mine was pretty traditional. But I think that, and this is no shade to the University of Michigan, because I'm go blue all day long. But I do think that there is part of me, and it's a large part of me that understands and realizes and is kind of trying to come out of some of the things that were ingrained in me by going into an institution that early in my life, because it did shape me in a way that now I'm trying to kind of break out of the confines of that, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
But my trajectory was pretty traditional. Yeah.
What is that? Just to put it out there, I told Camille my whole point with this series is I'm like them Scooby-Doo kids where I'm just like pulling the sheet off of people like, aha, this is the key that you need. This is the information they've been hiding. So can you tell us what that traditional journey looks like, just to put it out there?
You mean what mine was in terms of what I was talking about breaking out of it?
Yeah, like how did you get to where you are today? Like what was your path?
It was very specific. When I was younger, I had the opportunity to go to like my middle school and high school. It was like I did half a day academics and then half a day was theater. So that's rare. And I realized, do you want the tea? You want some real like TTT? Okay, so we're gonna do this. But I realized that, I tell this story about how I've told this to a few people, but it's like I was in this educational program, and we would do performances. We would do like 2 productions a year or whatever. And it wasn't until recently that I thought back to this, and I thought back to some of the stuff that kind of, some of the junk that was coming up for me later in life. And I thought back to these moments where we would do these plays in high school and in this program, and we would have like this theater makeup that they would bring out, right? And I remember always having to search a really long time for anything that was even close to my shade. I had a lot of colleagues, my classmates or whatever, that were white, that were getting their shade right away. And their shade, this is a true story. The shade of makeup that the name of their shade was Leading Lady.
Oh, snap.
That's a true story. That was the name of the shade of makeup. The name of my shade that I was looking for, that was almost nowhere to be found, I would get it finally, in this big bin and stuff, was Tawny. And so what that did for me in an educational setting is I was explicitly learning about theater. But what I was implicitly learning was desiring what somebody else's definition of theater was. For me, I was implicitly learning to desire white hair. I was like, if I want to be a lead, I got to look a certain way. I got to sound a certain way. I got to be. So that happens a lot of times in institutions. I would have to say that once I went to college, and I'm not saying this through any fault of anybody, anything like that, but what I am saying is that there was something implicit in that instruction
Mm-hmm.
So I internalized that, and it took root, and it was a false narrative that took root as truth. And so that
Yes.
influenced a lot of my early years. And it wasn't until I started realizing the value of my Blackness, the value
Mm-hmm.
of me stepping into who I actually was, my real identity, not a bunch of shouldas, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
other people's perception of what they, expected out of me when I step into a room or whatever. Um, but that's the kind of stuff, that's the work that I've been doing lately in terms of really making sure that I'm living from my truth.
Yes. Yes. But to I mean, yeah, that's real trash. Leading lady. It's like, I want to be a leading lady. You literally have to desire that white makeup. That's it crazy. And I don't know who makes that makeup, but I'm gonna Google them as soon as we get off this call and tell them, see, make sure they're not still doing
I
that.
and they don't do it anymore. They don't do
Okay,
it.
good. Because I'm like, don't make me use my dramaturgy skills now. I can do the research. I will
Right.
find them. But also too, it's just one of those things that you learn the hard way, right? Because had you not been in that environment, maybe you wouldn't have had to ask yourself those hard questions. But you really just hope that there's a better way, right? Like, surely I could have learned this lesson without having to feel this way,
That's
you
right.
know?
That's
My,
right.
my path has been super non-traditional. I've only ever done theater stuff, but I was real naive coming out of high school, and I just assumed that I'm gonna do theater and everybody's gonna treat me the same way, that I'm gonna get treated the same as everybody else. I'm gonna be on Broadway by the time I'm 25. It's not gonna be no problem. And then when I realized that there were other factors at play that I was not aware of, people that had been going to performing arts schools their whole life. I'm a public school kid from the rooter to the all the way up through my master's program. And so I was behind and I didn't even know it. And the fact that I could even be behind by the time I'm, 19, 20 years old, I'm already behind and didn't even realize it. And so that really kind of set me outside of the mainstream from the very beginning, because I didn't go to the performing arts high school. I didn't go to the fancy undergrad. I don't have the BFA. I have a BA in theater, that kind of thing. Um, and then I started teaching, which is like, maybe one of these weeks I can get into that. But that was just the most educational experience of my life. And it was seeing Black and Brown students learning theater and telling their stories, telling the stories of their families. We always did a unit on oral tradition, on folklore, and, seeing them get so excited to be able to share their culture with their class. That's when I really looked around and I said, you know what, this is not a me problem.
Yeah.
This is not a me problem. This is a other people problem, because the kids, kids know, they know what's real and they know how things should be. And so I was able to look at my students and know that that's the model right there that we should follow. That's the model we should follow. And not some of these other things. So yeah, my experience was real non-traditional, but I wouldn't change it for the world. When I was younger, I did go through some moments where I was like, man, I wish I could go back in time and do my research and go to like fancy school and just do all of it over again. But because I'm really happy with where I am right now, it's like I can't change any of that, because I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for that.
Yeah.
Um, so again, it just comes back to, again, for our working theater participants out there, like, don't doubt yourself. If there's an experience out there, give it a try. I mean, especially since we're all young. You got time to explore things, and don't feel that there's any one way to do this theater thing or this creativity thing or this art thing. There is no one way to do any of it. So discovering a path that works for you is going to be for you. And one day you'll look back and you'll be like, man, that was crazy, but ooh, thank goodness that's the path I chose, hopefully.
That's
Um,
absolutely right. That's what I would say. There's value. You can always see the value at the mountaintop, but there's value in that valley too.
that's
There's
true. That's the truth.
value
There
in
is
that-
value in the valley. Okay. That's a takeaway for y'all. There's value in the valley. And especially during this weird, unprecedented time we're living in, it's so easy to be like, oh my God, I done spent all this money on a theater degree and now we ain't got no theater left. But you know, as we discussed earlier, it's not that the field is gone. It's just changing. It's just changing, and in some ways, it's becoming more accessible. In some ways, there's still some challenges out there, but we're all going to learn from this moment in time. And the theater that happens on the other side of this moment in time, I think is going to be very inspiring. And so I'm looking forward to that.
On the other side of your greatest obstacle is your greatest opportunity.
That's true. That's another nugget. On the other side of your greatest obstacle is your greatest opportunity. So I definitely look forward to seeing what our artists of tomorrow, the people in the chat, are going to come up with. Because this ain't school. Y'all don't have to be here, but you're here because you're trying to get that knowledge because you got a story to tell. And I'm here to encourage you to tell it. So I cannot wait to see what our future artists come up with. So yeah, like we have a few minutes. If anyone has any questions for Safina, we can put them up on the screen. It could be about your artistic point of view. It could be about her journey. Y'all see me looking because I'm following along on YouTube over here. But yes, and you know what? It's never too late for your dreams. I just want y'all to know that I went to grad school. I was post 20s. I won't say how old I was, but I was post 20s. When I decided to go to grad school, I had been teaching for years, and I was like, you know what? I needed something different. So yeah, it's never too late to shift gears. All right, so we've got a couple questions. Okay, so Sofina, what is one thing you would tell your younger self in hindsight of your creative journey?
Oh my goodness. I would probably, I mean, gosh, it's a collection of everything that we've just talked about, right? But I think I would add to that, to just never to not get stuck in comparison. I think I was in comparison, that land of comparison, for a long time when I was younger, and really saying, other people's successes are not your failures, that there is no timeline that you need to kind of be attached to, because I got into a state of mind where I was like, I was qualifying everything based on the age that I was and where I wanted to be by the time I was, kind of what you were talking about before. And if I didn't obtain that thing at that particular time, then that was a quote unquote failure. Things that are seasonal. And I would tell my younger self that everything is going to come in exactly when it's supposed to. It's going to happen in the right time, because of course, hindsight being 2020, I look back and I was like, if that would have gone down any other way, I wouldn't have been ready for it. You know what I'm saying? So everything is preparation. In terms of discipline that we were talking about, I would just tell myself as a youngster, like, just stay on track with the discipline, with the daily practice and all of that. And don't get caught up looking to the left and looking to the right. Just stay focused on what you're called to do.
That's the truth. My mama told me that this morning. I called her this morning and I was like, I'm tired. She was like, just focus on what you have to do today.
That's right. That's right. Just put it in front of the other. That's right. You got to brush your teeth. If your breath funky, grab a toothbrush and just
start there. Just
right
start there. I think we have one more question. Yes, in these COVID times, what has changed for you and how have you adapted to it as an artist?
Is that for you? That's for you?
That's for you.
That's for me. Oh,
yeah.
COVID times, what has changed? My. That's a lot has changed. I feel like I'm on a constant swivel because there's always a pivot coming, every week, especially like, I know about this, I'm sure, because being a founder of an organization, it's like there's so much happening, and it's so you can get easily caught up in the weight of things, in the heaviness that's kind of happening. But as we said before, there's a lot of opportunity in this moment, but I have had to just really stay flexible, and, adaptability is key. And I think I've learned about adaptability the most during this time, because you can make a plan and then God says, Oh, that's cute, but here's what's going on. You know what I mean? And you have to adjust. And I will say, there's been a lot of quiet right now too. Even in the midst of all the noise, there has also been, during COVID, there's been a lot of times to reflect and to really get kind of attuned to what is really important and what is really priority, and to never to not lose sight. For me, this is always a challenge, and COVID times have helped with this, is not losing sight of, there are things that are urgent and there are things that are important, and to not confuse the two,
Yes, making priorities. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sofina, for joining us today. You have really dropped some wonderful nuggets for me and for our participants in this Working in Theater series. I really appreciate you taking the time. So just to pick up on our conversation today, next week, we're going to talk about career mapping, and we've already gone into it a little bit, but we're going to go into more details, like the different paths that there are. We're going to talk to some career coaches. So it's going to be really great. To my Working in Theater participants out there, tell your friends it's not too late to register. They just need to send us the email, send us the registration form so that they can get the link to the stream. And also, before we leave, I just want to go back and I want to make sure that I thank the California Arts Council for providing open captioning for our session today. The California Arts Council, their state agency. And we also want to thank the National Arts and Disability Center at the University of California, Los Angeles. So again, thank you to the California Arts Council and the National Arts and Disability Center at UCLA for providing closed captioning for us this afternoon. We are going to log off. Thank you so much. And I will see everyone next week. Make sure you check the Padlet between now and then, because I'm going to have next week's panelists and their information up too. So we will see you next time. Bye.